since we're all here now, then I guess we can get going, and I'll just kind of welcome all our viewers to Shop Talk on Grumpy Roadie. Today's subject is how things have changed. And we've got a couple of guests on site here, and I'm just going to let everybody introduce themselves. In no particular order, we'll start with Van. Van, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Vanz in here. I'm an audio guy. I've been doing this since the late 80s. Started out as a drummer, a musician, as many of us have. Went to Trebus for a year, smoked a lot of hash, then quit that, took a year off, went to Fanshawe College where I took the Music Industry Arts program. And then I got out of that, I quit drums, and I started full-time as an audio guy, starting at Band World, and then moving on from there. So, and here I am. And oh yeah, and about 5 years ago, I started my own AV company called Multitech Audio Visual, and we got no gigs at the moment, but it was going well. But yeah, that's the synopsis right there of my short and illustrious career.
Okay, well, since we're in audio land, let's go to Tony. Tony, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. How you doing, guys? And whoever else is out there. Tony Crea. Well, okay. Goes way back. Music is where I started way back when I was a kid. I've been involved in music, entertaining, performing pretty much since the age of 5. First band was when I was 12. I was the singer, so by de facto I became the guy who dealt with the audio. Eventually that happened, moved on, more band stuff. I eventually went and did a degree in music at York here in Toronto. I'm a voice and composition major, did a lot of arranging, electronic music because it's kind of what got me started in seeing that maybe you could actually do something with audio to make a living. There was a band that me and a bunch of my friends used to go see all the time when we were in college in Toronto called Billy Reed and the Street People. We got to know them very well. Oh, I guess I missed the part. I had a touring career as a duo with a buddy of mine. We still get together and play. I still play. I guess I'm still involved in music, but the audio portion, to jump back to this band, Billy Reed and the Street People, we got to know them. Eventually, one day, this is a horn band, 6 horns. The drummer was the lead singer who set up Downstage Center. That's how I learned to mix. Eventually, I told him he needed a sound man. He said, "Do you want the job?" After I finished my college degree, I had started working for the university. I had been offered a tenured position. I could be nicely retired right now. And no, I decided wisely to choose the option of making $70 a week with no food, no loaders, no trucking, no drivers, no nothing, to go on a road with a band. And my first gig was at the old Rondon Tavern in Toronto, which is across from where Hugh's Room is right now. It's no longer there. I was telling Eric something about my second weekend with this band. We went to Kent State, Ohio, at the university, at the campus where the famous, the shooting went down. It was just the anniversary the other day. Right. I had to, because there was no paperwork, no nothing, I walked across the border to meet the band on the other side. They agreed to let me back over. We came back in. The entire band quit, except for the singer, because the singer was a bit of a dick, who the drummer leader. Within the second week, I was now doing backup vocals from front of house and running the rehearsals for the new band. And I've never looked back since. I currently, I do a lot of gigs, not just doing audio. I stage manage, production manage. I've been lucky enough I can do numbers. What can I say? I deal good with logical things. There's a lot of things we all found. I'm sure will come up in this discussion. We all learned to be very versatile. Definitely touring in Canada. period, you had to be versatile because no one had the budgets to support separate people for all the jobs. Currently, I work for Solotech. I do a lot of stuff still, doing production managing gigs, stage managing gigs. I have a bunch of return contracts. I feel very honored that literally right at the start of all this little fun, March 2nd, I had just been hired as the new production manager in front of house with Jan Arden.
Nice.
We were starting to prep the tour, and we're not. It'll happen next year now.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all in the same boat when it comes to the gig situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go to our next guest. Eric, you want to give him a quick rundown for those who don't already know you?
Yeah, I'm Eric, and I'm an alcoholic. Unlike a lot of people in this industry, I did not start as a musician. I am a pure tech. I was at 1 year old. My mother wrote in my baby book that I was following candles and shadow light, and it's just always something I've done. I came into the business making my own light boards, stealing my neighbors' Christmas lights. Sorry about that. Not. And on
Real Hydro had the best.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was fortunate enough when I turned pro, right out of high school at age 17, I knew Bob Spencer from band, and we started Band World together, which at the same time started Christy Lights together and Doug Adams and Pyrotech. So as a young man, I was right at the cornerstone of those three production companies, and they've all turned into, huge global juggernauts, and I'm a 40-year overnight sensation.
I like that term, actually.
That's awesome.
Thank you. It's not mine because there's nothing original in this body. I'm just a melange of shit I picked up on the road. But I spent 30 to 35 years touring. I did a lot of corporate so that I could make enough money to keep my doors open to work in music, because rock and roll is my love. That's why I'm here. I got into the business to call the house lights out. The best light cue in a rock concert, house lights out. You get everybody's attention. It's just like, bitches, look at me. So that's what it was. And then due to either sublime timing or fate, I'm retiring. I was planning on going into pretty much semi-retirement on June 30th. I had wrapped up all my business and was condensing all my corporate, my incomes and insurance and all that sort of shit, and selling about half my gear. And all this lockdown did was push me into retirement early. So I'm in a fortunate space right now, and I can just hang out and enjoy being a musician, because for my 50th birthday, I gave myself the gift of music. I learned to play bass, and Vanz and I are in a great project. And it's weird, but a lot of people started in music first, and when times were tight and they did it to get chicks. I'm a fucking moron, because I went into lighting to get no chicks. Watched all the guys with guitars get chicks. Like, come on, duh. And now at 50, I don't have the same financial constraints, so I can buy whatever goddamn gear I want. And I'm having a hoot being a musician, because I've discovered the dream is over. I'll never be beautiful and on stage making money. So I'm here to rock.
Enjoy it, right? You can enjoy the rock and roll now.
I'm enjoying it more than almost anything else in my life, actually, at this point, is being a straight up musician and not making any money. Win. Right?
Truly living the dream. Yeah.
Yeah. In a way I am. I'm fortunate. I'm very fortunate. And I thank my lucky stars for that.
Yeah. One of the things I've learned looking back on, 30 to plus years of.
Let's hear about Steve first.
It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, with me, it depends on when I start counting, my dad was a professional musician. So I grew up backstage, right? I was lugging around guitar cases before I could ride bicycles. I operated my first PA system when I was 9 years old, right? I helped Daddy wire up his band's Shure Vocal Master system back then it was. and he figured he better teach me how to properly operate it so I wouldn't blow out his tubes constantly, right? So
Fair
then
enough.
he kind of, like, by the time I was 11, he let me mix matinee shows on the weekends, right? So by the time I was 14, I was a sound guy for the high school big band swing orchestra. And the guitar player had a little local home rock and roll band, you know, said, hey, can you do the sound for us? You know, and before I knew it, I was doing sound and backline for these guys, building them a live show with a couple of household switches and some fixtures we pulled out from the dumpster somewhere, you know. And yeah, and I remember we ended up playing Battle of the Bands one day. I was like 16 years old, short, chubby, nerdy looking kid. And I set up the back line, mic'd up the drum kit, and their sound guy came back from taking a piss. He was like this huge 8-foot, huge guy, big afro, big beard, nicknamed Bison, right? And the name fit. He really looked like a freaking buffalo. So he comes walking over to me, looks down at me, says, hey, kid, did you mic that drum kit? And I'm kind of like shaking in my boots, looking up to him, going like, yes, sir. And he looks over the drum kit, says, you want a job? You know, and so here's 16-year-old me get hired by the local PA company to do audio for them. And yeah, like Tony said, never look back. By the time I came out of school, like I left 3 weeks before graduation to go on a tour. Packed up in the back of 2 little Sprinter vans, playing clubs in front of 30 to 50 people in the basements all over Germany.
Excellent.
Yeah, and that was that.
And here you
All
are.
right, so
Steve.
All right. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, man.
So
Okay,
listen,
well,
my co-host Steve.
yeah, well, hey, good to be on the show again. Oh, hey, oh, yeah, back on Shop
Hey,
Talk.
oh.
So, a couple, you know, Vanz kind of knows my story a little bit, but I'll go through it. So, I actually started out getting interested in music because my dad was a music teacher and was a church organist for about 60 some odd years. And so I grew up kind of in the church until I basically realized that the church was kind of bullshit. But by that point, the musical seeds were kind of planted. So I went to university originally for music. I was a percussion major. I did that for a while, and I knew I didn't want to become a teacher because everybody in my family were teachers, and all they ever did was sit around and bitch about, you know, how much they fucking hated their jobs and hated their students and stuff like that. So, you know, I was like, all right, well, then I don't really want to fit into that. And so I was rooming with a few people at University of Western when one of my roommates was, you know, plowing some dude who was, you know, going to school at OEART, Ontario Institute of Audio Recording Technology in London. And I sat in on a couple of sessions with him as far as just to see what he did, and laid down some drum tracks. And then the next year I found myself at that very same school. And I did that. Afterwards, I worked at a place called Eyes Post Group for a bit, which I did audio to video post sync for a bunch of commercials and a couple of like really low rent movies and stuff like that for whatever was filmed in town. And then taught guitar lessons for a bit, and then I ended up working then at Stage Vision for about 10 some odd years, which is where I met Vanz when we were supporting some of the touring work that he was doing. With him and Don Henshaw and Dave Fortier. And after that, I joined CCR Solutions, where I'm now a production manager. And just like Vanz and the rest of you guys, I got no gigs now. So, you know, and unlike Vanz, though, he owns his own company. I don't. And so, you know, at this point, I guess we're all just kind of waiting for the phone to ring, you know, which sucks for all of us. And it's well-covered territory, that's for sure. But that's me.
Yeah, but you know,
Isn't CCR doing the PPE stuff? Isn't the company pivoted over towards that producing PPE?
Yes, now they have. So CCR a while back acquired a printing company. So basically they can get all sorts of set design stuff printed and stuff like that. So they, which I believe they're based out of Columbus, Ohio. So they transformed that, that's called Innovative Displays, I believe. So they transformed their manufacturing process into protective gear. for the pandemic right now. And because let's face it, there's just nothing else that's really happening. The only other thing that we've gotten calls about, which honestly, I don't think really yielded in much business, was some laptop rentals and stuff like that for boards of educations, which, you know, most of the boards and stuff like that procure their own stuff. They don't really look for rentals, you know, and beyond that, of course, it's just the advent of online meetings, which, you know, has kind of sunk everybody in some respects, but it'll be interesting to see where we recover out of this for everybody.
Yeah, that's primarily that's where we're getting our calls from now, are people that are online meetings. Most of it is like online galas or charity events that they want to put online. We're working with a couple of hospitals up here that, you know, that these particular events are where they get like almost all the money that they have for on their charity, you know, like upwards of $300,000 or $400,000 from these things. So it's worth it for them to try to find a solution to do it online. So we've been, you know, I've been doing Zoom calls like every single day, it seems, about this, because people, you know, are really interested in doing that. So for the moment, until we're allowed to get back to it, that's kind of our reality. That's the only thing that people are willing to put money into and, you know, actually book you for, because everything else is like so up in the air. We have no idea what's going to happen, you know. So no one wants to, you know, start planning a gala event with hundreds or even thousands of people in it. Forget that.
And it's going to be a while before that changes, you know, so there's no point to speculate right now. Before all the insurance companies aren't completely convinced that it's safe, nothing's going to happen, because nobody's going to get any money to finance any event or to cover any CEO or star flying anywhere to do a show, or even just liability insurance for a mass event, you know. Nobody's going to do that for a while. So that's kind of speculative at this point. But let's get back to our kind of subject, because we're all been doing this for quite a while, and a lot has changed since back then, right? So I mean, if what was your shiftiest experience like back in your starting days, where you look back now and going like, holy shit, were we stupid, you know? where you nowadays would run and prevent any kid from trying to attempt it.
Okay.
And you all know, I can see from Tony's look, he knows exactly what I'm talking about.
How stupid are we? You know, how stupid do we need to get?
I'm that stupid.
I know that I'm definitely in that category, Eric. You know, obvious things that I think we can talk about is, so I guess I go back to, if we are sort of looking into a history of audio gear first, and when you started using gear, first uses like of any kind of gear would have been around 1964 or 5 for me. Of getting something that you have to make one microphone work through something. The names, things like Doug McClement has done some posts where you've seen names come up, things like Bogan, Fannin, Courier. Like when we reached the Shure Vocal Master, we thought we were gods.
Right. Yeah.
that was a major achievement. And then at the time, so you had. You know, basically you went from single boxes to columns to so obviously I guess I was in, same thing, around 1970, I got on the Students' Council in high school, mainly so I could start booking bands. I was in the music program, blah, 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 but to jump to, our school had 3 gyms. It was a bigger school, a lot of kids in the area. I'm from North Bay originally. But bands like Lighthouse, I booked Lighthouse in the early days, early trainer boxes, which was a single 15 on a stick, to do, you know, 3,000 people, 2 of those. Things like that. The first big thing I ever saw was I booked Rush to come play our high school, 1968. Around 1968. They had just come off opening for the New York Dolls. This was the first time I ever saw a 24-channel console. It was a Trainer YPM 24, just because I remember, because I was, what the? Never seen anything like this. They had 2 of said single 15 boxes per side for their PA, so they were living large. Things like that. But to jump to the question of stupid stuff, eventually I started hitting the band circuit, doing the bars in Ontario, Canada, et cetera, et cetera. There are many bars. There were many, now there are
Many.
so
Many.
you know, silly things we did is, of course, none of us were trained electricians, had any inkling of really what we were doing, other than eventually you figured out stuff had to be plugged into work. It's if it wasn't working, you had to find a way to make it work. There was a club that used to be up at Victoria Park in Shefford called the Falcon's Nest in Toronto. Very bad power.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Remember it well, Tom. Yeah.
The DJ system was much bigger than any PA that anyone could ever bring in, and lost power to the console. Suddenly, so you could see it arcing a little bit. Oh, I know, I'll just fix it. So of course, I just lean over, strip off a bit of wire with my teeth because I have no connection, and I figure if I just guide these 2 pieces of wire into the little holes for the AC connector where the adapter went, I'd get power back to the console. The next thing I remember is I was in the arms of the lead bartender who had me like sort of the Michelangelo thing, the Pietà. He's pouring brandy down my throat. My chest really, really, really hurts, and I'm seeing a lot of white sparkly lights. I had shorted myself out to the console, and he had to whack me off the console with a 2x4.
Ouch.
I had a similar experience with electricity.
Yeah. Oh, unplug stuff first is the moral.
Yeah.
I think that's a good piece of advice to give.
It wasn't my worst gig, but I was on a gig with Dave Hall, who most of you know. And we were doing a rave. This would have been early 90s at the Cherry Beach Studios that had some kind of like a room off the side. And I was tying in live, which is kind of a thing that we like to do. And so I opened the door of the panel, and I'm screwing this, lead in, and someone opened the door, and then the door closed, and it arced the screwdriver, and it sent me flying. The same sort of thing. Kind of woke up and went, oh, okay, good, I'm still alive. That's great. So we finished the job. Had to knock the screwdriver off because it kind of arc welded itself to the box. So we got that off, and show went on. But there was a lot of that kind of stupidity that would never happen. I would never get their electricity like that. Maybe the most I would do is tie in some cam locks, but fuck, man, we used to tie in live all the time. Go into bars and just open the panel and just shove some cables in there. And, yeah, this will work. Or we would, a lot of times we would take the circuit breaker out, put the leads in it, and then bang it back in, kind of thing. That was safety. That was the safety protocol we used to follow. Right. So I found myself in that position a lot.
Right.
Did they see my stove plug to a battery clip adapter? You think I'm kidding?
Not really. I used to have, like, when I was still touring back in Germany, we had a 63 amp C5 to TRS adapter. It was kind of interesting looking.
Yes, we did stupid things.
I think Band World had a couple of twist lock male to male for some reason. Do you remember that, Eric? I think
yeah.
I won't mention his name who made them, but this isn't good.
that was because it was probably the only way to join 2 different pieces of gear together.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like there would have been a valid reason for it.
And Bob said, it's fine.
I've seen like homemade patch panels just operate with a whole bunch of standard sockets, and they'd have like male-to-male cables as patch cables, but they'd be standard U-ground cables. Basically, right?
Well, it's like, patch bay on a console. Male to male.
Yeah,
Good idea.
exactly. Cheap supermarket
Oh.
or home hardware market, Patch Bay.
Did anybody ever do any pyro?
I did back in the
yeah.
days, not officially licensed, but I remember.
Yeah.
I'll get to you too, Tony. Yeah, like I got two great pyro stories. I'm going to stick with one where I was actively doing the pyro first, and this was a band that I used to do sound and backline for. Was back in the probably late 80s, probably around 88 to 89 ish. And they were doing a show. They just recorded an album and they were doing a showcase for a record company. So we pulled out all the stops, basically rented this empty riding hall and built a big stage in there with multiple levels and rented a whole bunch of pyro. And I remember me and the bass backliner, we were in charge of doing the pyro shit. And he kept hitting the fire button while I was reloading pyro pods, right? We had like these flamethrower pods that worked on a powder explosion basis with this pressurized air that kind of would blow a cloud of powder up, and this little pilot light would light it on fire. And these pilot lights kept going out, so I kept running out on stage and relighting these pilot lights. While I'm doing this guy behind me keeps banging on the fire button, and these pyros are going off as I'm relighting them, right? And these 10-foot flames are coming out like just inches away from my back then hairspray laden hair too, right? So that was a pretty, but and the band had no idea because nobody had any plan or concept for the pyro. So we were literally chasing the lead guitar player across the stage with fire. He'd run up to one side of the stage and stage left, poof, fire goes off. Stage left, he'd run away, stage right into a wall of fire again. Best stage show he ever did in his entire life. They did get the record deal too at the end, so it was worth it, I guess. But it was sketchy as shit. Like, yeah, that was my personal pyro story one. The other one involves me being a video director and the band on stage being Rammstein. And the event was a biker festival in Berlin, where the local promoter and host of the festival was the local chapter of the Angels. But they weren't an official chapter because at the time the Angels were illegal in Germany. They were declared illegal organization. So you couldn't officially display colors or admit that you're a chapter. So they called themselves Born to Be Wild MC. And they hosted this festival outside of Berlin with probably about 80,000 bikers. This little thrown together wooden stage in some back alleyway. The security guards were all members of the club, you know, dressed in like ankle length leather trench coats with a shotgun underneath the trench coat. And their president was driving around with this little scooped up Vespa scooter with off-road tires and a big bag of cocaine in the glove compartment, and was just feeding his securities with a teaspoon. He was just feeding them cocaine, drove over the next security and fed him cocaine. Anyway, on stage was Rammstein. When their pyro guy tested his first load in the afternoon, the fire marshal left the site. And it ends up that they lit one of my cameramen on fire. Like during the show, insane show, crazy pyro, one of my cameramen comes on the intercom and says, "Hey, this is camera 3, can you take me off the screen?" And I'm like, "Why? You got an awesome shot." He goes like, "I'm on fire." And I go like,
and you
"What?"
said, "No, hold the shot, hold the shot."
That's what I did. I said, "Dude, hold the shot. It's great," because he was like right on the thrust, and the singer was out there, you know, interacting with the crowd, and he was shooting straight up at him. It was a really great shot. And he sticks his arm in front of the lens, and the sleeve of his leather jacket was just like on flames, right? Apparently, like one of the flamethrowers along the thrust misfired and spilled a whole bunch of the fluid, the lighter fluid or whatever they use, petroleum gel, whatever it was, spit all over his leather jacket sleeve. And when he walked past the next one that went off, it lit his sleeve on fire, right? Luckily, he didn't get hurt because he was wearing a leather jacket, which was just a safety procedure on that event anyways. But yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, look, let's pivot back to the whole, we want to talk about what has changed, right?
Yeah, let's
And
go to that.
I got to say that one of the biggest changes is regulation right across the board, all levels. All right, because when I started, when I was a kid, we would work 36 straight hours. We would drive vehicles high on substances. Do you remember when 5-ton trucks had a throttle lock on them? You could put the thing to the floor and then pull out a rod and twist it. So now you're ripping down Highway 7 at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're fucking fried. Let's call it what it was. And on to the next gig.
You mean
That
with
was
the
like,
microphone stand as the throttle lock?
Yep.
no, there was a real throttle lock on
There was
trucks.
a real one, but before that, you threw in a microphone.
Before that, mic stand. Yeah.
Yes.
So the amount of hours that we used to work, tying in live power all the time. Now there's all this sort of regulation for it. And I was born on heavy equipment. I am a natural zoom boom forklift operator. I love driving heavy equipment. But at a certain point in the last like 10 years, all of a sudden you needed all these separate tickets and then you had to get them redone. And my job has always been as a designer director to be on the ground. My job's not to be in the air driving equipment. So it was kind of like a tax grab from my point of view. And I let all my certification lapse because I don't need to be a scissor lift driver. We've got people for that. But I'm really glad that it did tighten up and there was more training because there was fucking zero training when we started. It was trial and error. Do you remember something called Tricot Clamps for tie-in? A Tricot clamp was a cam lock piece of wire and then to a big clamp with a set of jaws. And you could tighten down the jaws. So you would go to the load bar, line side of the club, live, and just go yoink, and tighten it up and the claws would dig in and you'd connect your cam locks and go. And one day along the road, I got an ESA inspection and the inspector went in and looked at it and took them. Just plain took them right in front of my face. What the hell are you doing with these? Unplugged them, yoinked them, and left the club with them. Me with a set of cams going, now what do I do? You know, we always find a workaround, but the changes are this increased safety regulation, which, you know, not everybody follows, but it's been a big thing. Gear's gotten lighter, significantly lighter, and draws less power equals less danger. And in lighting land, LEDs with no heat means you don't burn yourself so much. So the changes have been like brighter, faster, lighter, cheaper, and it just keeps doing that.
It's probably a good thing that Eric got cut off anyway. Really.
There was no physically cutting him off otherwise. Yeah.
Just building up too much momentum there.
But it's true what he said though. It's like, yeah, man. It's like all the shit that we used to do and take it for granted. Like that's just how we did it, you know. Tying in live and that kind of stupidity.
Absolutely.
Crazy,
like I made that comment about, you know, like me doing that thing with the electrician, but no, none of us were trained. I went out and got hired to do sound. Suddenly it's like, yeah, we're going into bars. You know, suddenly you know, Eric talked about stealing Christmas lights. Yeah, our band, we used to, the Hydro had the real cool ones that they all looked clear and then they were just colored inside.
Right.
And then we learned to make, you know, switches out of whatever we could find to turn the lights on and off. But the live tie-ins, you know, yeah, we came to just take it for granted because each bar owner was going to go, I'm not turning off my beer fridges, so deal with it.
Yeah. See, I had like the opposite problem because I went to engineering college in Germany, right? So I studied electrical and mechanical engineering. And so I had a lot of theoretical knowledge. Like I knew how to design the circuitry for an elevator control system, for example, right?
On the other hand,
but this was like all theoretical lab bench knowledge, right? Not even though it was based on real world examples, but it wasn't.
And just I have no formal training of any kind of technical training.
Well, that was what I was just going to get at too, because it turns out that formal training initially in the first few years was very little help. Until
do you guys, either of you, did you like do any formal like electronics, or like, I know you say you went to Harris. I didn't know, like, no anything I did in the audio world as a career was just, I went in, I was always a tinkerer. Like I said, being the singer, you kind of dealt with the PA. But like, either of you guys, did you go to any formal training or?
Went to formal training, but the thing is that it only ever really did so much, like in a recording studio environment. So like in a lot of ways, going to like a Trebas or any of the other audio colleges, it doesn't train you for what you actually do in live audio at all.
That's what I'm hoping to hear.
Oh, hey, he's back.
You know, and the gain structure is completely different too. So, you know,
there's the definite, you know, a point that perhaps we would all agree on, that, you know, going from live to studio is easier than from studio engineers going to the live world.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
I think there's a big difference though too, as far as just a lot between corporate and band, let alone, you know, just in the live environment as well.
Mainly because of the changing acoustics every day.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, when the guy that hired me from my first official PA company job, he used to refuse to hire people that came from the School of Audio Engineering. Like the first guy he got from there, took him to a festival to be A2 on stage in a festival situation, and the guy starts micing the drum set and pulls out a tape measure to position the mics from the heads in a festival changeover, right? Yeah. And my boss just looked at me, he goes like, where'd they teach this kind of shit? You know, and from that day on, as soon as you came from the SAE, you're automatically disqualified.
There I need to, not interrupt, but I just need to just state all valid points in ideal circumstances.
Yeah.
All
no, I totally agree. I was just actually supporting your point. You know, in a studio environment, that'd be totally applicable if you're controlled scenarios.
Even live, the basic laws don't change. The basic rules don't change. The applications don't change. The math that Eric needs to, when he's working out what, you know, his draw of an entire show, doesn't change whether he has one lamp, a million lamps. The formula is still the same.
Right, but what changes is you don't need a tape measure. You have experience. You know, you look at the scenario and go like, I need to place this about here. You don't need to whip out the tape measure to do it. You know what I mean?
If I may go back to our topic that we're discussing, it hasn't changed. That has not changed. Either you get it or you don't.
Exactly.
And because the technology of understanding, basic lumens, basic audio, understanding what a microphone is supposed to do and a speaker is supposed to do, that has not changed. The regulations definitely is a great comment there, a huge affectation on how we do things, and you know, definitely I'm not even going to begin to speculate on, you know, the upcoming changes and how we're going to modify and adapt, and you know, we're going to try and do our gigs. You know, people are still going to try and do things, so it's going to be how we accommodate it. If anything, there's a reason why. And I don't just say us, but any group of people that have been doing this by choice for many, many years, we learned to go with the technology as it grew, to learn to use it as another tool, not the end all, because it's not. And I don't, you know, yes, am I an old fart when it comes to some stuff? Perhaps, but I know that I really, really always enjoyed looking forward to learning the new technology. What's a new approach to doing? They're not. The end result's nothing new. Eric, you still have to pass some kind of light through a filter to create some other new visual display. You know what I mean? Whether it was done with a candle through a piece of glass, whether it was then you colored the glass, or you learned that the glass got hot, so you had to find something to hold it. We had to learn to do transducers, how to make them better quality. The changes, we haven't even gotten near enough time to really discuss the changes, because it's been exponential, especially in the last 10 years, even more so, where the curve of watching, and it's not that it's changed anything at the basic level. I'm sorry I'm spouting off, but I guess there's too much to talk about if we want to go into detail. But I definitely have seen, as a production manager, I've had to stay in touch with all the technologies. Yes, audio is my specialty, but you definitely really have to make sure that if someone starts talking to you about some new video technology, some new lighting technology, you either go, okay, I haven't seen that yet, or can you can you direct me? Changes. The ability to use the media and technology available to us now to instantly look up a manual, instantly look up.
PDF manuals on the phone.
Well,
that saved my life so many times.
These are changes that I definitely see. I think it's from, do I see, if I were to talk about audio change, and for Vanz, you've seen it. Steve, you as well. Like we've seen it.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, technology has changed all across. What's more interesting, maybe, is how has the work environment changed for the person? Is it more fun, less fun? Is it now all business and no more crazy rock and roll wildness? Is that romantic magic element completely gone? What has that meant?
Not for me.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I still love it, man. I can't get enough of it. I'll always do this. Everybody talks about retirement. I don't think I'm ever going to retire. I just don't. Well, this is like we're putting ourselves into semi-retirement right now. I can't see myself living like this. It just drives me fucking crazy, man. I can't wait to get back at it. So
why do you think we're doing this show? Come on.
Yeah, exactly. So we can talk about how we're going to be getting back at it.
If nobody else is putting on the show, we're going to make our own, even if it's on the internet,
Yeah, but I think Tony brings up a good point too, though, as far as just being, any good production manager that's worth his weight is always going to rely on his crew somewhat, because you can't be an expert in everything. You just can't. And just don't try to come off as that. Like, I don't know, being a production manager myself, I know that, I know very minimal enough to be dangerous about, video and lighting. But am I the guy to say, no, you're doing it wrong? Like, no, probably not. Well, and you know what? I'm okay with that.
I'm in that same boat now too. Now that I own my own company, it's like I'm hiring people to deal with that stuff. I've had to kind of open up my world now to learn video and learn lighting, so I can at least talk the talk. But hiring people to handle those things that's smart business. I don't try to do everything. I just make sure I put the right people in the chair.
That's what you call intelligent delegation.
A lot of AV companies don't do that, man. They'll get the guy for $15 and then they'll fucking tank the thing. Mm-hmm. It's all money. I say spend the money on the people that are executing this thing for you, for sure. I'd rather lose money on that and have the thing go well every single time.
Yeah, I get repeat business.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Right, it's the stupid bits. It's like it's easier to maintain a client than it is to get a new one. So if you can do whatever you can to keep that person on your side.
Yeah. Sure. One advice I always get clients when they come and ask me, like, for where should I go, what production company should I go with, and I go like, what? At the end of the day, you can rent a Barco or a Christie projector anywhere. It's go with where you feel taken care of by the crew. Where you feel that if that your demands are met as far as the interaction with the people that are executing the event, because they're the one that make the difference. you know, the
Well,
same projector will
that's
keep-
loyalty.
well, yeah,
That's loyalty,
exactly. But
right?
and that's where we're, you know, how you separate the good from the bad, because that way
Right.
the good people will survive, because they'll get the repeat business, because yeah, these guys did a great job, you know, for us. I felt taken care of. They managed to accommodate us even with stuff that came up last minute that we hadn't planned, whatever the scenario is, you know. And
Unless you're a massive conglomerate, of course.
yeah, but I mean, but the advice still holds, whether they feel they need to take it or not is a whole different ballgame. You know
Of
what I mean?
course.
The principle remains. They get the best bang for the buck where they get the best people, because the equipment's going to be the same everywhere.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing. Talking about change, the landscape for sure, especially in the corporate arena, has changed drastically. You know, with the PSAVs of the world coming in. I mean, Eric was there at the time when when the Sheraton was run by Henry, and I tell the kids, when you walk in there now, it's like, this used to be so easy. We'd come in and Henry go, yeah, you tie in over there. Where's the lift? It's back there. It's plugged in. What else do you need? Do you want to use the track spot? Do you need the mirror ball? And it was all, included for the most part in the room. And people could do events without going bankrupt or getting this ridiculous bill at the end of the event and go, what's that? What's that $50,000 for a half a dozen points or a three-phase tie-in? It's like, come on, man, such bullshit that we have not. Now we have to deal with that. We never had to deal with that before. It was so easier. Just come in and do your thing and not have to worry about it. Now it's like you got to jump through hoops. And, I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever done a lot of work in the PSAV properties. I mean, they make you jump through hoops and the stupid AV concierge fees and the fee. That's what they pay us a fee, and that's where they got that name.
Hey, even with those
God forbid you
concierge
want to
fees,
use their scissor lift,
yeah, even with the
Oh, yeah.
concierge fees, that doesn't mean that anyone's actually going to physically be there to, supervise your
Oh,
load.
There will be somebody
racket.
there. There will be somebody there if it's Norbert Frischkorn, because he'll tape an X. He'll tape an X on the ground. Take some duct tape, put an X down there, and he'll go, "Do you work for me? Well, then stand there till I need you."
Yeah. I had a client
And
like that too who did that.
I learned that.
Stay
I
there.
learned that from Norbert. And on some of my shows with Jim Fairhart, where they would do that AV concierge, I would put a chair in the ballroom for that person to sit there. And I'd say, I don't care if you read the paper, eat a sandwich, or give yourself a reach around, but you are not leaving the ballroom to go set up somebody else's show.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to charge me $75 an hour. Your punk ass is going to sit there. I'm going to feed you and I'm going to treat you well, but I will not let that part go.
Yeah.
So,
And
hey,
that's another big change, right? It's the corporatization of the world.
Yeah.
so what do you think
started with
about the whole charge for house lighting remotes? Then I'm just curious to know, Eric.
Well, most of them don't work. The fact of the matter is, in
Yeah.
Canadian ballrooms, the house light systems are 85% ineffectual across this country. So as a lighting director on these shows, I've been providing the house light. I go back into the corners with trees and I shoot light at the people and I shoot light off the truss. And I do that on all shows that I design, assuming the ballroom lights are going to be fucked. And when I come in and I look at them and they're like, well, that doesn't work. And they say, would you like to rent the remote? I'm like, that's cool. You can shut them off.
That's where experience beats rider specs,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because on the rider, I'm sure there is probably a total Crestron system listed in there with everything. It's great.
Or my
Just
favorite,
because
my
it's programmed
favorite
doesn't mean it
is
works.
The wireless. I like the wireless remotes
Yeah.
where you actually have to aim at a bullseye at across the ballroom from your light board and trying to zone in on this thing, and it still doesn't work. I've had to physically leave the light board and run into the audience with the fucking remote, doing this, trying to find a receiver that'll shut the lights off for a video roll.
And they're all well disguised
that place
behind
in Markham. It's like that. One
they're
on
all hidden
7.
behind the crystal
Yeah.
chandeliers, so you can't really see them.
Hey, but I'm sure you're not the first guy that has run around the aisles trying to turn something on in the crowd. Like, what about when that projector blows up on the fucking truss and the video guys, walking out into the crowd, go, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God.
Or you have
Yeah.
the
You realize there's no backup projector, It's like,
You
Jesus.
also have the other opposite where everybody goes running, hiding. Like I remember we did a show with
Nice.
Bill Clinton in Germany. He was doing a big public address thing, and this 10K in the front truss blew up with Bill Clinton on the stage.
Nice.
Now you don't realize how high the Secret Service agent percentage in the audience is till something like that happens. Right. First of all, there's this like big pileup behind the podium where all the Secret Service throws themselves on top of the president. And at the same time, the entire audience starts bubbling with people talking into their sleeves,
Yeah.
It's insane. Like you turn around and you realize half the audience has been Secret Service all along in civilian clothing, looking like everybody else.
I gotta say though, going back to like the years of Clinton and like when I got into the business, it was like early 2000s and stuff. I can say one thing I don't miss as an audio guy is VHF anything. That's for sure. Because it just always failed. And you look at all those other wireless systems that were around at that time too. Like,
Just made
do
us.
you remember AMX? For like slide projector remotes and stuff like that. And all the shit that it should work fine. It should work fine. And it never fucking worked.
I just had the 25th anniversary for a Broadway show I did in Germany with the Datatone slide control system. I had basically the entire back of the stage was made up of 58 Kodak slide projectors, each of them triple blended on the same surfaces. And I had like some front Pani 2.5 kilowatt Pani slide scrollers with gray sliders for dimmers projecting on a scrim at the front of the stage.
Well,
Plus
you wonder what
the laser disc players for video monitors that were in the moving truss around the deck.
Remember why video guys were so nervous back in the day? Like, just think of all the times the slide projector would jam with a slide in the gate. And like if you got so many going, Jesus.
There's a thing that's changed for sure.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, that's
we don't
way
deal
better.
with that shit anymore. Right?
Yeah.
With 3-gun projectors, you don't have to deal with that anymore. There's another good change. Loving that.
They become so compact and small too. All the video projectors are so nice and small and light.
Yeah, not having to use a super tower to put it up onto on some scaffolding is nice.
Well, do you remember Dark Time for Focus?
Yeah.
Everybody get out of the room for 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't light a cigarette in the back corner because
please cover the emergency exit lights with some black dye.
And cover the exit lights like it was. Yeah. It was like you've got to go to the depths of Hades for 3 hours. All work had to stop just to line up a projector, and I don't fucking miss that at all.
Yeah, what were they? 1,000 lumen projectors.
Yeah, and they're all RGB.
My first tour was 800 lumen, and that was a 6-gun CRT. And those 800 lumens, mind you, were when I got it perfectly dialed in and tweaked ideally, right?
The fact that anything on video side like that is now push and play, it's ridiculous.
Now back then it was actually tweaking it with a tweaker. There was like, I remember there was like 32 trim pots for each of the 6 guns on that CRT projector that you manually had to tweak with the tweaker on the circuit board on the underside of the projector, hanging in a harness under the front truss for 2.5 hours.
If I may interrupt.
Go for it, Tony.
It made every one of us stronger. You actually know what those controls do.
Exactly. Now, nowadays, with push button lining up a geometry.
Good point, T.
Yeah. I made the transition from rock and roll to corporate very easily.
Yeah,
it was so easy for me to do that. I just thought, this is the best thing ever. What? You get fed? What? Per diem? What's that? Yeah. That kind of thing. I mean, that's one thing that I can have enough money to put a house, a roof over my head, and pay and have kids and all that stuff. And it just opened up my whole new world when I jumped into corporate. That was a good change for me. I kind of went very slowly. I started with the staging matrix. I don't know if you know Peter Kendall. Anybody? I know you do, Bartnes.
Yeah.
That was my in. That's how I was able to leave rock and roll. and go into corporate and everything from there. I mean, my career was awesome after that. I was really struggling in rock and roll, and I have a great admiration for those that are doing it or did do it back then. Perry DeZera, I don't know, you might know Perry. That was my mentor, man. That guy was awesome.
Perry and I are peers. He started a few years after I did, but not many. But yeah, we were out there, like Eric. Many of us started within probably a 5 or 6 year period, and so I'm as a actual working sound man started in 1980.
Yeah, he was instrumental in I was coming out of college, as a studio guy, trained studio engineer, and he brought me up to speed. Well, you know what? It's like, same thing, okay, Mike, the drum set, I'm doing like the XY thing over the heads, and he's like, what the fuck is that? or being, overly particular about everything. He's like, let's just get the fucking thing up, and then we'll worry about the rest later. Make it beautiful later. Let's get this operational, right? And he was so good at because we drove a lot together. We were like driving to Quebec like every weekend to do shows, because there was shows, and you could actually do, with a band, you can play at one place for a whole week. That's like unheard of now. And I'd bring the manual with me. I'd bring the manual for the PM 1800 or 3000 or whatever we had. I'd be going through it and talking. So what's that? What's that? What does this do? What does that do? I mean, that's how I learned. And he was gracious enough to share the knowledge that he did have, and because of that, when you see someone, one of the younger techs that actually looks like they give a shit and are interested, I take the time and I walk them through, and they ask me, why are you doing this and why are you doing that?
Yeah.
I take the time and try to help them out, because I mean, that guy, like I said, it was because of people like him that I was able to do so well.
I was just going to say, we all have that mentor, that
hopefully we do. Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have been gotten to where we were, because we didn't have the resources back then. There were only two things you could do: read the manual in the back of the van on the way to the gig, and have somebody
ask your brother.
Yeah, have somebody who showed you how to do it, right? That's the only two sources of information you had. And if everything else you had to figure out on your own on-site by doing it. Right.
Well, I think too that it's important to remember that, like, one thing that I think we all have in common is that we all believe in that time-honored tradition of passing down knowledge to those that really want it, because we came from that exact same environment ourselves, right? And I think that's something that, in some respects, unfortunately, is getting lost. I think on the newer generation of technicians that are coming in, and along with that, a little bit of the camaraderie too. When you're kind of put everywhere and you're, I don't know. I just don't see it as much in the younger generation personally. And I'm not even all that old.
Great power comes great responsibility.
Well, that's another thing that's changed, right? Is that when we came into the business, there was a hierarchy. You know what I mean? It was
absolutely
military. It's like, that's he's in charge, and what he says goes. None of this. Why can't I mix the band? Because you just got out of Trevis, or you just whatever college, and you don't know shit. But paying your dues. I know it's cliche and everything like that, but it's so important, man.
No, it's why it's so important, because experience is so important in our business. Like we were saying earlier, we don't have time to pull out a yardstick to measure a microphone position. You have to be able to tell the solution quickly based on experience. You have judgment based on your experience, how to solve situations that you encounter. And
well, that's the truth. I spent most of my life was doing one-nighters.
Yeah.
So I became a specialist at walking into a room, sussing the joint out in 45 seconds, making instant decisions, but then living with them.
By the way, instant decisions. If we get cut off again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to restart the meeting and send you the thing through the Facebook Messenger. So,
one thing that's important to remember too is just, like the whole thing of passing things down and everything like that. But it's just, I don't know. Just like I said, it just seems like it's lost. And I know that when I was a tech starting out, if I wanted to learn something, I would take the opportunity to sit with someone like Vanz or whatever. I wouldn't get paid or anything like that, but I would do it for my own well-being to get to a place where I could, get better gigs and stuff.
Well, I don't think it's lost. I think it's been a little overshadowed by all these kids coming from schools with degrees and with the presumption that they have knowledge, where they may not where they still have a lot to learn. While back then you knew you didn't have anything to learn because you didn't have any previous knowledge or no sense of entitlement that I've learned this, So for that, you need to overcome that initial hurdle before they realize, oh shit, I don't know shit.
Yeah, I know. I had
experience. Then you can start
right.
teaching them. Then they can start learning.
Exactly.
You can't fill a cup that's already full.
I was very aware that I didn't know shit. I knew it, and all I had to do was work with people like Perry DeZera as a great example to know you didn't know shit.
Right.
And to shut your fucking mouth and listen, because the teacher is here and he's going to share the shit with you. All you have to do is shut up. And a lot of the kids don't go think that's a positive thing. They, like I said, they want to sit in the big chair right away. They don't realize that there's hard work and hours of your life that has to be spent before you get to sit in that chair. And they just don't want to do that. They want the fast track. They want to get in there right away, and they can't understand why.
Yeah.
I think
they
some
want
of
to
those
get it
schools
all the
are
way
guilty
down.
of that.
Telling them they're great all this time.
Yeah.
You're
I
great.
think those schools are guilty of that, though, in some respects, because when you go to school for like audio recording or something like that, it's almost made out to believe that, hey, guess what, guys? There are just jobs out there waiting for you. Go join a studio, become this big time mixer, and eventually you'll be a record producer and all that kind of stuff. And then you get out into the real world and you realize that well, that was a fucking pipe dream. And if you want to be able to make rent, then you better find something else and you better know what to do pretty quickly. That's why a lot of us who ended up going to audio engineer colleges and stuff like that, or any other college of any other discipline, end up here by default in some respects. Because at the end of the day, you still got to pay rent, and you still got to eat.
Well, yeah. How many recording studios are there now? When I got out of college, I had the opportunity to send my resume because they were looking for somebody at Metalworks, and I knew a guy that got in there because he was a year ahead of me, and I found out that they were making somewhere in the neighborhood of $500 every 2 weeks or something like that. And even as a new sound guy that didn't know anything, fuck man, we were making $125 a night. Christ, I could surpass that no problem. So I mean, that was a major turning point for me because I was thinking about the recording thing. I'm like, and it's like when I found that out and how little they were getting paid and how little opportunity they were getting, because I mean, when you're at a recording studio, what are you, as a new guy, oh, you're making coffee, you're sweeping floors. As a front of house, as a live guy, they throw you on monitors, man, and figure it out.
And good luck to you.
And have shit thrown at you and stuff like that because you know what you're doing.
Yeah, the band hates you, but good luck.
Trial by fire, baby. It's the best way to learn. Trial by fire, and all of us have been there.
Yeah.
Right. No, it's true. Like I remember I got my first PA company job. He kind of handed me the keys to a loaded truck, sent me off to a festival. I had a handful of riders for the band to expect, and he said, "Here, go." And he handed me actually the mobile phone we had, the one we had in the company, the briefcase Motorola analog cell phone still. Right?
So, but it was about yay big, yeah.
The gigantic battery pack.
Yeah, it was the size of an attaché case with a detachable handheld thing, right?
Also acted as a battering ram. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, and it had a standby time of maybe 2.5 hours. So basically, when you got on site, first thing you do is find power for the cell phone.
Good Lord.
Yeah. There's another great thing that's changed. The communication now. So much of it was done with the obviously the phone, and then fax machines. Now it's like we just take it for granted how easily it is to send you the updated whatever version of that rider or that contract. No problem. Here you go.
Yeah,
so much easier. You don't have to meet with anybody anymore. You don't have to. You know what I mean? You can be in meetings with people for a year before you actually see them face to face, and that's awesome. I love doing that. Just do it everything from the comfort of your own home. It's a beautiful thing.
But I
back
do-
then I was under strict orders only to call or use that cell phone basically in the worst kind of emergency because it was so expensive.
Emergency.
Yeah, like unless
Yeah.
my XL400 is on fire or something
Exactly.
like
Or
that.
cameraman's on fire.
Yeah,
The cameraman,
exactly.
he can use it.
You know, like, hey boss, I've got a couple of Apogee 3X3s here that are spewing flames out of the 3-inch horns. What should I be doing here? You know, but yeah,
Make
but
it
you
go
know,
time to the music.
yeah, you know, but it was like kind of the thing is if your mentor or boss figured you were ready, he'd kind of send you out there, do or die, you know, sink or swim. But again, that's what we we're saying earlier
Yeah.
about that mentor role. He would basically be the one to kind of gauge if you're ready for that challenge, if you're up to the task.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I show up on site there and then find out the band that I'm doing audio for is Girls School, right? And which I don't know if you guys know the band, but their bass player used to date Lemmy at the time.
Did they open up for Crew Meal?
Hmm.
No.
Fuck. Dude,
Anyway,
dude, we
Sorry, I had to.
we all used to date Lemmy.
yeah. By the way, I think we will probably get cut up in 5 minutes, so yeah, we'll just be ready for that.
Okay. Well, let's do a wrap up.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
what have we learned? What have we what can we pass on? I mean, we all agree that pyro is dangerous and shouldn't be done on indoor shows.
Don't tie in live.
Right? Don't tie in live power. Don't drive overloaded vehicles on pharmaceuticals. All these are good rules.
Yeah, unplug things.
Hmm?
Unplug things.
Unplug. Yes.
And I think we will at some point have to reconvene and continue this roundtable because I think this is a pretty good group for
There's
of grumpy old guys to kind of take any kind of subject matter and chew it up from.
I think any one of us could safely basically even kind of take a little area next time because, you know, there's, if we're to go to the update thing, like, you know, how things have really changed,
Right.
you know, really it's the understanding, you know, the introduction of digital technology. That's
a huge one in itself.
You know, but it's not, you know, if any of us, as I guess what I'm trying to say is many of us had friends that totally resisted it.
So basically, what we're saying here is that we're going to reconvene and have another roundtable on the impact of digital technology.
Well, that's just one.
Yeah, that could be another episode. In
One-
Yeah, I totally agree. I like the idea. I totally like the idea, you know, and I'm sure there's plenty of other subjects we can come up with that we can kind of throw around in the round.
You know,
We could make this a regular thing if you guys are up
the
for it.
regulations thing is a big one.
Huh?
The
Regulations?
Regulations would be another good one for
So,
sure, yeah.
Eric, just if I may very briefly, Eric, just touch on, you know, this whole thing of the
We
drive-in.
got 3 minutes left before they cut us off, Tony, just so you know.
The drive-in phenomenon. In and of itself, a great idea because it's a presentation media method where you can stay in your vehicle. However, I think the obvious concerns are how does everyone go to a washroom? How do you stay clean? How do we blah, 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 the social distancing?
And security, you know, how do you make sure they don't have a handful of hand grenades?
We don't have, if you can't think of all these details, then you shouldn't even be thinking about it anyways.
Right.
Okay? If you can't come up with all the details, don't even think of it because people go, oh, you're poo-pooing the idea. No, no one's poo-pooing the idea. And if anything, when you get to North America versus Europe, again, you know, you talk, there's any number of resource references we can all go to, but these are the things that we need to start looking at as the upgrades, how things are changing. The technology, yes, I really, you know, I'm a nerd, like every one of us here. I wanted to hear about everyone's take on, you know, I hear stuff like you come into it at a just pre-automation level, you know, whereas when it was pure analog, there was no, forget EQ, forget, you know, there was one knob. So you still had to try and make it, you still had to try and make it do what you had to achieve. Yep. You didn't have an EQ. If you had an EQ, there was, you know, a 5-10 band, maybe. You had,
for sure.
You had 4 bands of parametric or 2 channels of parametric. You had to understand the technology is good. I'm sorry I ate up all our time, but I think we
No
all
worries.
got.
Yeah, we're down to the last minute, so I kind of got to wrap it up here. But yeah, it sounds like we're going to be back for more on this, and I want to thank all of you for being part of this first experimental kind of roundtable of the veterans, whatever.
For anyone that's listening.
And yeah, I would say let's do this
for
again,
joining.
and
Go ballyhoo.
Go up now, Eric.
and we'll make the next
Go
one.
ballyhoo.
We'll make
Eric.
awesome, Eric. I love it. And the next one will be, I guess, on the impact of digital technology. And with that, there'll be infos and links to all of these guys' emails, if they don't mind, and businesses and whatever in the description of the
No
video.
problem.
Make sure to like and subscribe, and see you next time on Grumpy
Right.
Roadie.